What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, Donald Trump is out there pushing an idea that would impose a 5-year ban on welfare for all new immigrants. He made this announcement at an Ohio rally and basically said those seeking immigration into our country must be able to support themselves financially. It makes a lot of sense to me, because one of the reasons we have such a huge problem with illegal immigration and the refugees is they're coming to the country thinking it's a land of milk and honey, and they're going to get all kinds of free stuff. These refugees coming on in are actually getting more government support than our veterans. And it's all about this, global government situation here, but it makes perfect sense. We simply can't afford to even take care of our own people right now. We shouldn't be trying to take on all the destitute of planet Earth here. Now, as you know, the media has made a big deal that Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic are refusing migrants, and it's leading to a clash with Brussels, which is going to impose fines on them. The European Union is taking Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic to court for refusing to take in 160,000 migrants under this agreement made in 2015. And they're asking for a fine of 250,000 euros per migrant. That is a huge, huge chunk of money. Here's what the corporate media is not telling you. Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republic are accepting migrants that pass the basic vetting. The ones they're turning away are the ones that are not checking out. They've got criminal records. They're found to be making false statements in their applications. And that makes perfect sense for anybody. When you have a right to control who's coming over your border. And if who's knocking at your door has a criminal record, a history especially of violent crime, or you catch them being deceptive, yeah, turn them away. It makes perfect sense. But for the globalists, for George Soros, their idea is that everybody, rapist, mugger, infected with Ebola, has a right to go anywhere on the planet. That's the agenda they're pushing. Except for Israel. Israel's message to refugees is go back to Africa or we'll put you in prison. So, now up in Germany, do you remember the big stink happened back in 2013 when Angela Merkel literally, she was in a meeting with EU leaders and they had an EU flag and there was a little flag of Germany and she literally threw it away. Big stink over that. Well, now, of course, she's in this desperate bid for a 4th term as chancellor. And now, all of a sudden, the German flag is a good thing. And she's waving it around saying, see, I believe in Germany. And I don't think the German voters are going to fall for it. And the German people are very unhappy at what's been going on in Germany with the mass immigration and slavery to the EU and the ECB. And if Angela Merkel gets a 4th term as chancellor, I'm going to say definitely need to look at election fraud. Getting on back to that Grenfell Tower and its horrible, horrible tragedy, there was a big discussion over whether this cladding was legal or illegal to use. That kind of cladding, the thin aluminum with the polystyrene insulation, is illegal to use in the United States because it's known to be a fire hazard. And the initial reports were saying, well, this cladding is legal in Great Britain. As it turns out, there's a qualifier on it. It's legal to use on 1- or 2-story dwellings. It is banned for use on taller buildings. And obviously the Grenfell Tower qualifies as that. And so it burned right down to the core. Hundreds may be dead. And the tower is still standing. The only good news coming on out about this is that the chief executive of the Kensington and Chelsea Council, Nicholas Holgate, has now resigned over this matter. This was the guy who was in charge of the company that was in charge of maintaining and the renovation of the building, and he's now resigned. trying to get away before things really get ugly. Now, early in the show, I was talking about the erasing of Confederate memories in this country, and it was in the context of people in Europe have reminders all around them of what they suffered in World War I and World War II. And the only war, you know, in the United States, the last big one fought on U.S. soil was the Civil War. And it's rapidly disappearing. And there is this campaign to take down all Confederate memorials, all Confederate statues, ban the Confederate flag. And again, it's trying to erase our history, to make us forget who we are and where we come from. But there's been a little bit of a setback because apparently there was a move to take down a Confederate monument in St. Louis. And a judge has halted it, temporary stay, because apparently there is some confusion over who actually owns the monument, and there is another trial underway right now trying to figure out who is the legal owner of that monument. And so this judge has said you can't tear the statue down until this other trial is over. It's a temporary stay, but better than nothing. We're going to do a shout out to our affiliates just now rejoining our network. There's a very alarming story. This came out of gatesofvienna.net. It's a translated article, and it's talking about an incident where two asylum seekers in Germany were harassing these girls. And one of the girls called her father on the cell phone, and the father came on over. One of the asylum seekers had apparently exposed himself and was pleasuring himself, I guess I can put it that way, and not upset the FCC. And apparently got into an altercation, and he slapped the two asylum seekers. And the police showed up, and one of the asylum seekers was still threatening the daughter's boyfriend, who was also there. And so the two asylum seekers were arrested, but the police also are charging the father and the boyfriend of the girl with criminal charges for assaulting these asylum seekers. And it's things like this that I think are going to work very much against Angela Merkel when she runs for re-election. Meanwhile, over in Hungary, their prime minister is doubling down on his commitment to not allow Muslims into his country, describing them as freeloaders, rapists, and jihadists. And this dovetails with that other story saying that these countries are allowing immigrants to come on in if they pass the vetting process. If it looks like they're going to be a benefit to society rather than a burden, they're allowed on in. Meanwhile, 1/3 of the current FBI terror investigations are refugees allowed in by Barack Obama. 1/3. It's got to be stretching the anti-terror resources just a little bit. Well, you're probably looking at all this stuff, you're reading all this stuff, and I may be stating the obvious with this article from Russia Insider, but the wheels are coming off the globalism wagon. People are seeing what's coming. And again, if you get back to that Stanford prison experiment, what happens when the entire planet is a giant prison? And all of our guards are in just one capital city. The abuse will increase over time. It's inevitable. That's why our nation was supposed to be different, with an intentionally weak central government split into 3 branches designed to keep an eye on one another so they didn't get too big for their britches. And unfortunately, over time, we have lost that. It's been taken away from us. It's been stolen. Now, over in Montana, they're getting themselves inserted into the transgender controversy. There's a conservative group is trying to get a ballot petition because the legislature wouldn't touch it. Wants to get a petition drive to get a measure on the ballot to decide whether transgender people must use public restrooms and locker rooms designated for their gender at birth. And this group, the Montana Family Foundation, is hoping to place the matter on next year's fall ballot. And, of course, people up there are saying, well, you know, the transgenders have rights. The transgenders have rights. Well, what about the rights of the non-transgenders? We only account for 99.9% of the population. Don't we have a right to decide who we're going to be sharing bathrooms and showers and locker rooms with? I think we have that right. And again, I think we can just solve all this matter with doors on the restrooms. Instead of saying girl and boy, just say, you know, the genitalia names. I don't know if I can say those on the radio either. But again, this is part of this attack on our sense of self, our sense of identity. They want to get us confused over what bathrooms to use. Gender is fluid. You may not really know what gender you are. Apparently, they're starting to aim materials at children to convince them they don't know what gender they are. Again, it's an attack on your identity, your sense of self. Because people with a strong sense of self, people with a strong sense of who they are, where they come from, what their history is, what their family's done, they're hard to control. So, apparently Jeff Bezos, who is now acquiring Whole Foods, is going to rescind Whole Foods' promise to label GMOs on everything by next year. Not going to happen now. I think Jeff, and I know Amazon is a very wealthy company and he's a very rich man, but again, he's destroying the brand with this. And I think that the people who shop there aren't going to shop there anymore because they go to these Whole Foods and they pay the higher prices for the assurance they are getting safe, healthy, organic, natural food. And if you're not going to get that, they're not going to go to the store. They're going to go to whatever supermarket's closest. Under Jeff Bezos, Whole Foods is abandoning their customer base. The same mistake that Radio Shack and so many other companies have made. So let's talk about GMOs here because there's been an alarming development. Most of the genetic editing that is being done today uses a technology called CRISPR-Cas9. And it's described as molecular scissors for its ability to snip out pieces of genetic material and paste it in someplace else. And this technology is now so commonplace, even high schoolers are playing with it. And a study out this week in the journal Nature Methods reminds us it's still a new technology and it's not proven. And apparently researchers at Columbia University discovered that although CRISPR did manage to successfully edit the particular gene that they were aiming at, they were correcting blindness in mice as an experiment, they discovered that CRISPR caused mutations to more than 1,000 other unintended genes. And apparently it's been known for a long time that when you are using CRISPR on DNA, that it's going to cause damage to other places. These are called mutations. And it may be that the technology is still defective, or it may be the fact that DNA is incredibly self-referential. And because you've snipped and pasted and cut one part, eventually it's going to alter other portions of the DNA. You look at that DNA molecule, and the traditional view is the spiral, the helix. But the reality is that when you actually look at the structure of a gene, it is a strand of DNA that is incredibly folded in on itself, and it's constantly moving. sliding past itself, trading information. And if you've got an altered gene, it can have catalytic effects on other portions, leading to more mutations. This is very reckless and dangerous. Now, again, in cooked food, genetically edited DNA is not a threat to you. It's been broken down into its amino acids. The problem is that in the altered life form, malformed DNA can lead to malformed protein expression. And as you eat food from genetically engineered plants and animals, your body is going to try and take in those proteins and try and fit them into the appropriate receptors in your body chemistry where they're supposed to go. And they'll probably go on in, but they're not a perfect fit. And nobody knows what kind of ill effects this might result in. We may not find out for a very, very long time what these effects are, especially in a culture that works very hard to keep such things secret from the consumers in order to maximize profitability. Look how hard the vaccine industry has worked to suppress information on the toxicity and ineffectiveness of vaccines. Look how hard Monsanto has worked to suppress negative information about GMO. We live in a society where we literally cannot trust what we are buying at those supermarkets. We don't know. We're not being allowed to know. And even the manufacturers don't really know. They haven't looked. Somebody could make a mistake that winds up sterilizing the human race, and we don't realize it until it's too late. Everybody's involved. That may have happened with the epicyte gene. You know, I keep telling everybody that I am presuming the universe is full of life and intelligent life, and everybody says, well, why haven't they shown up here yet? And my usual answer is, why would they bother? Do you stop and visit every anthill you pass as you drive down the freeway? But there may be another reason, and that is that intelligent life on other planets reaches a stage where they start tinkering with their own biochemistry and code of life, and somebody makes a mistake, and they go extinct. That could be an explanation for why we've never had extraterrestrial visitors. And no, I'm not taking phone calls about UFOs and space aliens and Elvis and the rest of it. Now, another little article, and this gets back to Hodgkinson. Mental health issues are at the forefront of politics, but the fact is that no one is looking into the causes, is what should concern us all. And again, are we seeing corporate profitability being protected? Because we know that one of the potential causes of mental health issues are these prescription psychiatric medications, which can cause a lot more damage than good. I remember one of the tragic stories that we covered on this subject some years ago. This was in Great Britain. Young lady, successful, doing very, very well, hit a little bit of a rough patch. Doctor put her on an antidepressant, and her behavior got really bizarre. And the doctor put her on another medication, made things worse. Put her on another medication, made things worse. She wound up being confined to a mental hospital. And she'd started the process a perfectly normal, functioning human being. So, we do need to look at the cause, and we need to look honestly at what's going on. Are we drugging our entire population into bizarre behavior? And again, I want to know what prescription medication Hodgkinson was on when he shot up those Republicans. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And just had one of the listeners write on in with an email about the Grenfell Tower, saying they should build high-rises out of that magic flame-proof paper used in the passports that always seem to conveniently show up and point the finger of blame following a false flag terror attack. Yeah, that might actually work. All right, we're going to take some phone calls here. Alex in San Antonio, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I was calling because I wanted to talk about spaceships and aliens, but then you already said we can't do that. No, I was calling because I don't know if you read this today, but there was about 230 significant arrests made of Hollywood elite, and they're reserving the names. And I was just, I know that they say causation does not equal correlation, but there's been something I've been noticing. Up to right now, we have almost 11,000 people global arrests that have been made of people that are in the elite circles and people of influence in different countries. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if that is not the reason why all the world seems to be, going into chaos. One terror attack here, another one there. I mean, it seems like everywhere these elite circles are firing back. You know what I mean? I mean, the thing that I find most, I guess, incredible is what's happening to Qatar, where they were kind of like left, because I've been to Qatar, I've been to the Middle East, I've done a lot of business there, and most of their population is indentured servants. Yeah. They're from Bangladesh and they're from India, and they have their passports taken away from them, and it's a plethora of just organized crime. Like, you can go there and talk about certain things very freely, that would otherwise land you in jail in a place like America.
Okay, yeah, I understand where you're getting at with that one. Getting on back, I mean, you're kind of all over the place here. I have not been following the child abuse arrests. I understand they are happening, and I understand they're not getting a lot of coverage in the corporate media, and I'm not at all surprised that in Hollywood the names of the people being arrested are not being released because, Hollywood has a lot of pull, and, the main players over there are always protected, not because anybody particularly likes them or what they were doing, but because of their bankability. You want to preserve that capacity of a movie star to make huge amounts of money by drawing people into the movie theater. And if they have some bizarre behavior on the side, well, you just protect it, and that just enables them to go on with the bizarre behavior. And you see that in Hollywood. You see it also in the New York entertainment centers. You see it in places like Las Vegas. That really does go on a lot. Now, the reason why so many elites seem to be engaging in these vile behaviors, I think, is an expression of, I can get away with it. Remember when Jeffrey Epstein, when he was doing all this stuff in Florida, he got arrested. So as soon as he got out of that trouble, what's he do? He goes off to the Caribbean and he buys an island and he sets up his new little Lolita palace down there where nobody's going to bother him. And so that's an expression of personal wealth and power. I can get away with things that ordinary people cannot. And I can imagine that a lot of crimes of all kinds by the elite are just because they want to know that they can get away with it. If you remember the Thomas Crown affair, there's been 2 different movies made of it. And here's a guy who's insanely rich, and his hobby is being an art thief. He could buy the paintings, but he'd rather steal them to prove he can get away with it. So that appears to be part of, what happens to you when you get very rich. There was even an article that we had on the website a couple of days ago where psychologists are saying that as you rise in corporate life and to become a director of the board of the CEO, your brain actually does go through some changes that changes how you view the world. And I'm not at all surprised at that. See the same thing with very humble people who rise to the top of Hollywood and they turn into absolute monsters here. Alex, we got to take a break for commercials. We're going to let you go. We'll be back with more phone calls after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the telephones here. Don in Louisiana, I think, or Los Angeles, I'm not sure. What's on your mind today?
Hello, it's Iowa.
It's Iowa. Oh, I'm sorry. On this display, the L and the I look the same.
All right. Well, anyway, you were talking about glyphosate. I mean, you were talking about GMOs.
Yes.
And I was wondering, since I live here in the middle of Iowa in the GMO country here, and they use a lot of glyphosate. But what I've wondered since I moved up here, and I like it here, but I've kind of wondered. It seems to me you can't get away from glyphosate anywhere. You're in Hawaii where they got golf courses, right? They use everybody uses glyphosate. People use.
I live right on the edge of a golf course here. If you ever need any golf balls, I got lots of them, for free to send you. It's become ubiquitous in the environment. They're spraying produce with it because it helps them last longer. They're spraying it on various feminine hygiene products. I don't even know why they're doing that. But it's become that they're just spraying it everywhere, and it's been declared a probable carcinogen. That French study that Monsanto went to such lengths to get retracted, showed these rats exposed to glyphosate just developing these huge tumors. And again, it's a case of profits over public health.
Well, if you look on here, I looked on Google and tried to Google glyphosate toxicity rating by state, and you get a widely differing opinion. Some of them said the government officially has the toxicity level 3, which is not very toxic. It's almost safe, is what they say.
Well, they also told us Saddam had nuclear weapons.
Right. Well, they say that, but then, like you say, the French study said that some countries in Europe don't have it, right? They say they will not allow any glyphosate. Is that what's going on now?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of countries don't want glyphosate.
Russia?
Russia's banned GMO, so is China. And the EU is actually talking about banning glyphosate as well because of the carcinogenic risk. And, of course, Monsanto is still out there trying to push this stuff onto everybody. And their goal is to basically take a monopolistic control of all food production. Where, they're talking about, in some countries, they're criminalizing farmers who use heritage seeds. That's how out of control.
It's a bad deal.
It is a bad deal.
But for just the average guy like you and me, we don't have the ability to change everything. We can't snap our fingers and make Monsanto go away. So we have to live in America. So what I was wondering is, does it make any difference where you live? It seems to me it's everywhere. Yeah. I'm right in the middle of corn and soybean country here.
Well, you may be getting a little more airborne exposure to it than somebody who lives in a city and is only exposed to glyphosate on the food that they eat rather than the environment as a whole. But it's a genuine risk. And the fact is, nobody knows, and we are finding out now. Nobody really wants to know. As Dr. Dufault was telling us, the job of the FDA is just to make sure everything has an accurate label. They do not test for food safety whatsoever. It's left up to the manufacturers, who obviously have a vested financial interest in getting the product to market as quickly as possible and pretending there isn't a problem.
Right. Okay, well, basically, it's everywhere in America. It's probably, and then as far as the other countries, it depends, right? But in Europe, it's not. You might be better off in Europe or in Russia.
Well, again, they're trying to ban the glyphosate in Europe and many other countries. I don't know how long it takes for the glyphosate to decay in the natural environment. I presume that being a very volatile chemical, that it will probably decompose very, very quickly, unlike the modified genes in the GMO food, which, of course, are going to continue as long as that species survives.
Yeah. Well, what do you think will happen? People don't like it. They're trying to buy, if they have a chance, they try to buy organic stuff if they have enough money. And really the money is not that much more if you try to get non-GMO stuff if you can. But I don't know. I mean,
I think what right now, the best thing you can do if you've got a local farmers market around your home is you ought to be buying as much of your food from them as you possibly can, because you literally can no longer trust what is in those corporate supermarkets.
Well, I don't see how you can trust the farmers market either. They might spray their tomatoes not with glyphosate, but they're with something.
Well, again, there are differing degrees of danger with the pesticides, but most, we've been to the farmers market down here at the bottom of the hill, and
right.
When they say they're not using Roundup, I tend to believe them. They're pretty straight people, and they understand that their customers are coming to the farmers market because they want to avoid that stuff. They're not going to kill their customer base by going, back
I'll start asking
Roundup.
them. Yeah, I think we've got farmers markets around here, but I haven't asked them specifically do they use Roundup or not.
Okay.
But I don't know. Any kind of chemical is a chemical. I don't know which one's worse. I mean, if they spray for this, spray for that, they spray some other kind of chemical. None of that stuff is good for you.
Okay, let's see. I'm looking right now. This is from the California Department of Agriculture. Apparently, glyphosate takes 96.4 days to decay. That's its half-life. So I was correct. It doesn't last in the environment forever.
Well, that's what they say, yeah.
Well,
okay, well, that's enough for that for now. I guess I'll let you go.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Jeff in the Twin Cities. Aloha, Jeff. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I went into a Starbucks today, and both bathrooms are male, female, and handicapped, and all they have in there is the toilet. There's no urinals, and there's space for, get together with and move around with, a wheelchair. Okay.
Okay.
Now, this weekend is the big Gay Pride Festival and Parade in Minneapolis. People come from all over the world. And it was in the paper today that for the first time ever, the police are not welcome to participate in the parade. Maybe this is part of this weaponized liberal pushback.
Yeah, that could get ugly.
And then the other thing is that we're in Minneapolis, the city council is imposing a $15 an hour wage minimum on restaurants employees with no tip credit, and all the locally owned restaurants are saying we're going to have to close. We're not going to be able to make it. And yet at the same time, we have this newly majority immigrant Muslim culture that is starting businesses all over, all the way, up and down every highway and at Fargo. And I think they'll probably be able to come in and take over these locations, and then they won't be forced under the same rules. And there's also a story in the paper today that there's a homeless camp near a light rail station, and the neighbors have been calling the police, the authorities, and the mayor, and they will never return their calls.
Well, there's a problem with the homeless camps, and that is they have to be somewhere. Unless they pass a law saying that, you can shoot a homeless person and with impunity, the homeless have to go somewhere. We have that problem here on the island of Oahu because we're in the middle of the ocean. It's not like these people can walk anyplace else. Now, we did have a program for a while where if a homeless person could prove that somebody on the mainland was going to take them in and give them a home, the state would buy them a one-way plane ticket, and I think it was a very humane to do. But mostly it is a case of moving the homeless camps to wherever they're going to cause the least amount of harm. In the case of Hawaii, that means away from the tourism venues. And they're constantly taking the homeless who are down in Waikiki because they're more likely to get handouts and contributions from the tourists than anyplace else, and they'll basically shuffle them off. There's a gigantic homeless camp around the north shore of the Center Lock right down here in Pearl Harbor. And I got to take a look into it because it runs right up to the back fence of this school that we were using as a filming location on Lost. And you could just look over the fence right into this homeless camp, and it was just horrible to see. And there used to be a TV series called Dog the Bounty Hunter, and it may still be on the air, but back then it was actually filmed here in Hawaii. Now they're in Arizona or something like that. And they did an episode where they went into this homeless camp searching for a bail jumper, and it created an instant scandal, but the homeless camp is still there.
There's also a problem where we have a lot of shelters in and around downtown, and the people in the shelters who should, be getting help and rehabilitation or whatever are coming out and getting in everybody's face downtown. They don't have the money to participate by going into the bars and restaurants, but they're basically intimidating and, going after the people that do come downtown. Mm-hmm. And the police told me that they are told to not do anything unless they see a gun or hear gunfire. That we're going to have a Super Bowl here this year. The downtown is a complete mess because it's so far behind in all the construction. They're building buildings, condos, apartments everywhere, and yet they're taking away half the lanes of the major roads for bike lanes. And I almost had a dream that I could see that these bike lanes will be where the homeless camps are set up back when things really start to go bad. It's like,
could easily happen. We're losing a lane on the Kamehameha Highway to the light rail. Anyway, listen, Jeff, we're starting to run out of time, and I got a bunch of callers waiting. And by the way, your comment about the unisex bathroom, obviously if the bathroom just accepts one person at a time, it doesn't matter who goes in there or what gender they think they are.
That's cool. That's cool.
Now, there's another approach. There's another approach, and it's called a unisex bathroom. When I was still working in film, I worked at a company in Rome, Italy, that had a unisex bathroom, and it was basically a common area with the sinks and the towels and tampon dispensers and everything else, and then all of the toilets were in these little stalls. And basically men and women went on in there. And it was really great because if you were in the middle of a conversation with a female coworker, you didn't have to interrupt it. You'd go on in, and after you were done in the stall, you could pick up your conversation while you're washing your hands. That actually worked very well. I was very comfortable with it. And I think it's something that ought to be introduced into the United States. It would certainly end all this nonsense about, transgender rights. It worked very, very well. People had privacy when they needed the privacy, and the rest of the time it was a very social environment. Anyway, Jeff, thank you for the phone call. We're going to all right, we're going to switch over to Gil in Arizona. Aloha, Gil. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, nice toasty Arizona day at 118. We're near Phoenix, actually a retirement area, Sun City, and they're replacing a lot of the grass that they have to water with decorative rock. And I'm finding out that they're constantly spraying weeds now, these tough desert-type weeds. And one thing I never hear talk about is what about all these fumes and the effects on wildlife? Birds, got to eat something. They're always scratching through these decorative rocks and pulling little, seedlings and so forth that are weeds. So I'm just wondering what it's doing to our air as well.
I'm unaware of any studies that have been done regarding glyphosates or weed killers in general. Hair, it could be, it might not. The problem is we don't actually know, and that's all that we do know, is that we don't know. But as far as the decorative rock area, it sounds to me like the contractor literally didn't put enough rock down there, or maybe should have dug down the soil and laid in something that doesn't support weeds growing, maybe a hefty level of gravel, and then the decorative rock, and you wouldn't have these problems to deal with.
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes it's very dusty out here, and I know that on my own property, on my lawn, we put this black plastic a couple inches down But unfortunately, after several years, the dust accumulates, and then you have a nice layer of what we call topsoil, and it's almost impossible to control. You know?
All right,
so,
well, I
anyway,
take that idea back there. All right, listen, Gil, thank you for the call. We're going to switch over here to Mike in Maryland. Aloha, Mike. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about Uber and what's going on with Uber, how it keeps losing money quarter after quarter and maybe years, and they don't have much overhead that I can tell, but they must be getting private investors. And my take on my conspiracy theory, if you want to call that, about Uber is, even though they're losing money and they're getting investors, I think they plan on bankrupting all the cab companies, and when that happens, then Uber is going to jack up the price for the cars and have a monopoly. What's your take on that?
It's entirely possible, but you raise a good point. First of all, I think the concept of Uber is flawed because you don't know what kind of a person is driving that car that shows up. There have been some ugly incidents where criminals are signing on as Uber drivers in order to get victims for crimes. There are other circumstances where criminals will call for an Uber car, which doesn't have the security screen you find in a professional taxi cab, and then they'll rob the driver or other such nonsense as that. So that's a little flawed. But you're right. There's a big question mark over the vast amount of money pouring into Uber and these continuing losses. And I think at some point the investors need to get together and demand a full bookkeeping audit of just where all of that money went, because the inflow versus the outflow, given the low overhead, it just feels like something is off somewhere. And I certainly would not...
Well, if the... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, we gotta let you go anyway because we gotta take a commercial break.
If they bankrupt all the local taxi cab companies, then they can set their own price, and the investors will come out like a bandit too.
All right, we gotta let you go. Thank you for your opinion. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here, and unfortunately, we've got a bunch of callers. I don't know that I'm going to be able to take all your phone calls, but let's get started and try. Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Aloha. Listen, Mike, I want to make a quick comment. This world's getting crazier every day.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel that there's a few Adolf Hitler clones out there living. It reminds me of that movie, The Boys from Brazil. Is that movie based on a true story, Mike?
No, it isn't. And by the way, cloning Hitler's DNA would not produce another Hitler, and the movie even addressed that, saying that you would have to recreate his life up to the point where he became Hitler. And that was where that fell apart. But again, I don't know that it's necessarily that they're cloning Hitler. I think it gets back to what I said about all power corrupting and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think people who get into these positions at the top of a government, it goes right to their head, and they start playing God with the rest of the world. And this may be part of why Donald Trump has let us down on some of his most important campaign promises, such as jailing Hillary Clinton and winding down all these foreign interventions.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you. We're going to switch to Jerry in Chicago. Jerry in Chicago, aloha. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. I learned something very interesting today. I worked at a U.S. gypsum plant in East Chicago, Indiana, and I found out from our contact that they use synthetic gypsum rather than have it shipped in from one of their mines that they mine it out of. I also know that gypsum is a mineral. It's also used as a food additive. It's also used as a filler in aspirin, and it's a filler in beer. And I asked him, I says, well, where's the synthetic come from? He says it's a byproduct of the coal-burning power plants. And I says, I says, any chance of that getting in as a food, as a filler, or into the aspirin? He goes, oh, I don't think so. I said, well, let's put it this way. If you own Bayer aspirin and you had to pay to have it sent to you and mined out of the ground and dried and crushed, I says, wouldn't it be in your advantage to get it for free from the places that are trying to give it away?
Yeah. That's very common in our economy, in our industry. You know, companies, they have leftovers for what they're doing, and they try and find an application for it to take it off their hands. Coal tar was a real serious contamination problem in the 1800s, and along with that was the idea that the railroad ties on the tracks, the wooden ties, were rotting so quickly that they were looking literally at deforesting the entire United States just to keep the trains running, until somebody realized you could paint the wooden ties with the coal tar and they would not rot. Marriage made in heaven. We know that a lot of the chemicals that companies are trying to get rid of that are toxic are literally, the fracking companies are paid to blend them in with the fracking fluid and pump them deep into the earth on the hope that they're going to stay down there. But unfortunately, they don't. There's the music. We've got to close the show. I'm sorry to everybody who did not get on the air today. You can try and call back tomorrow, Friday. A reminder that the Lady Claire will be joining us in hour number 3 of tomorrow's show. Take what you learn here, share it with everybody, especially that History Channel, America's War on Drugs. That must go viral. Every American needs to understand exactly what this government is all about. And, by the way, Mark Anderson is coming on with John Stadmiller on his show, which is immediately following the station break, so please stay tuned. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.